Okay, this time we're going to talk about transforming formulas. And when we're talking about transforming formulas, we're basically just talking about solving an equation, um, much like you do with regular equations that we worked on. So if we had something like 3x plus 6 equals 4, okay, how would we solve that, right? First thing we would do is we would undo the addition part. Okay, so we'd try to work on getting the x all by itself or isolating the variable. So we get the 6 over to the other side and we get 3x equals negative 2. And then we divide by 3, right? And so that way x is now isolated and our answer is negative 2 over 3. Okay, so now transforming formulas is basically the same thing except for now unfortunately, this is what actually scares most people. Now we have more variables involved typically. So in the case in your notes, it talks about at the airport and how you have computers that the air traffic controllers use. This is on page 16, by the way. And the computers, what they do is they basically just use the formula distance, or d, equals the rate the plane is traveling times the time, right? And when we have times, we just put the two variables together. So we don't have to put the little x in there, especially since we're using variables. If we put an x, that'd really look confusing. Or put a dot or something like that. We don't need to do that. So in this case, in your notes, though, they say, look, what we want to find out is we might know instead the distance that the plane has to go and the rate that they're going, but we want to know instead how long or what is the time it takes for that plane to get there. And so we want to solve for the time. So let's take a look. First of all, we want to solve for the time. This is the one we're looking for here. Okay, the time. So first thing we got to do is we got to look and see what is the rate and the time doing. So the r and the t are actually being multiplied together. So if that was a 3 instead of an r, what would we do with it, right? All we would do is we would divide by that 3 if it was a 3, but in case it's an r here. So we'll divide by that r. And now r over r equals 1. So now we're just left with 1t, or just t. Okay, but again, we have that law that says whatever you do to one side of the equation, you must do to the other. So we're going to divide by r on the other side. And now we're left with d over r equals t. So we've now solved for t. T is all by itself. So we did exactly what we needed to do. Okay, we got t by itself. It's all isolated. So now we have distance over rate equals time. Okay, and now the next example that they give you in your notes, they give you, actually it's an equation for average. So the big A in the equation stands for average, and they gave you 3 different variables, so A plus B plus C, and they divide it by 3. So that's how you figure out average, right? You add the 3 numbers together and you divide it by however many there are. So you got A plus B plus C over 3 is equal to the average. So now in this case, the A plus the B plus the C are inside of a parenthesis, so we have to do everything inside of there together. Now in this case, we can't really do anything with them because they're all unlike variables, so we can't do anything with them. So what we need to try to do first is we need to try to get rid of this 3 first. So since 3 is on the bottom of a division sign, or bottom of a fraction, if you actually multiply instead by 3 over 1, okay, and you can cross cancel here and your 3's go away. So we're just left with now the A plus B plus C, and then whatever we do to one side, we have to do to the other side. So we multiply by 3 over 1, which is the same thing as multiplying by 3, right? So we're going to multiply by 3 over there, and we're left with 3A. So 3A equals A plus B plus C. Okay, and here we're going to solve for A. So now we've got them all by themselves. So let's take our time here, and let's start with subtracting the C. So we subtract C first, and those go away. So now we're left with 3A minus C equals A plus B, And now we got to get rid of that b. So now we subtract b. And because math people like to be nice and organized, we're going to underline, we're going to do 3a minus b minus c equals a. And there we are. We have that example all done now. Okay, we solve for a. Alright, so next you have a couple of try these on page 17. You have solve c equals 2 pi r for r, and then you have solve p equals 2 times the length plus 35 for the L, and finally you have the same formula we just used, except for they have an extra letter variable involved. You have a equals a plus b plus c plus d all over 4, so the average again, and they want you to solve for c this time. Give those a shot, pause this for a second, and then come back and I'll show you how to do them. Alright, so let's take a look at the try these. The first one, you have c equals 2 times pi times r. Hopefully you realize that that was the formula for circumference of a circle. And in this case, they want you to solve for r. So let's take a look here. We have 2 times pi times r. So if they're all multiplying, what you need to do is you need to do the opposite, which would be division. So you divide by 2 on both sides. You get c over 2 equals pi times r. And then you divide by pi. And in this case, we're going to put the pi on the bottom again. So c equals c over 2 pi equals r. Now, eventually we'll let you go ahead and do those in just one step, but I'd like to see you kind of do the steps so I know exactly that you know what you're thinking about there. Let's continue on. Next one, perimeter equals 2 lengths plus 35. So let's solve for L in this case. First thing we're going to need to do is we need to undo this addition. So we're going to subtract the 35. That's going to turn that into 0 on that side. Those cancel out. We're left with 2L. And over here, we're going to subtract 35. So we have P minus 35. And then we need the L by itself. So we do the opposite of the 2, which is now dividing. So we divide by 2 on both sides. And you have L equals P minus 35 over 2. And that's it for that one. And finally, let's take a look at the last one. This is the same one that we just did earlier, except for one extra variable, and the 3 is now changed to a 4. So hopefully you know how to do this one already. We're going to start out by multiplying it by 4 over 1, which cancels those out. And we multiply by 4 on this side. So we have 4a equals a plus b plus c plus d. And we are now looking for c. So we're going to go ahead and subtract a. We got 4a minus a equals b plus c plus d. Subtract b. So now we got 4a minus b equals c plus d. And we're going to subtract d finally. And we have 4a minus b minus d equals c. And there you go. So that's how you do all those. And finally, we have one more example in your notes about computing the earned run average for the pitcher. So I'll flip over here. Alright, and for the formula for figuring out the earned run average, or the ERA, what you do is you multiply 9 over the runs per inning. Now the reason you do times 9 is because there's 9 innings in a Major League Baseball game. So you do 9 times the runs per inning. Now, so we're going to start off in your notes. We're going to solve for I here. So what we're going to do is, first thing we're going to do, because the I is on the bottom, it's almost like the 9 if you multiplied it together, right? I'm going to go ahead and move it up to the top, because if you multiplied the 9 times r over I, you're going to end up with 9r over I, right? Okay, so then what you need to do is we're just going to multiply by I. I'm going to put the lines on it because it's going to be kind of hard to tell the difference. I over 1. And so over here we're just going to multiply it times I. And then here we have AI equals 9R, because those canceled out. And now we want I by itself, so we divide by A. And we are now left with I equals 9R over A. And there's one more, try this in your notes, talking about the formula for a football player's rushing average. And it's R equals their rushing in total of yards over the number of carries that they have. So it has R equals Y over N. And they want you to solve instead for the number of carries. So we want N now to be solved for. I want you to pause it for a second, give it a shot, and then come back and check this out. Alright, so you're going to multiply again just like we did in the last one. We're going to multiply now times N to get the N off of the bottom of the fraction because we need it to be on top, right? So those cancel out. Put it over 1, cancels out. And we're left with just Y on this side. And now we times N on this side, and we have Rn equals Y. And then we divide by R, and N equals Y over R. Oh, I put Y over Y. It should be Y over R. And there you go. We've solved for N now. Alright, so that's transforming formulas. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me.